Who are the new Untouchables? This post is about the new planned definition of extremism and whether you will be able to identify the new extremists, the new Untouchables amongst us, or whether you have concerns about the plans of a new definition of extremism. Will it threaten religious and political rights? If you didn't know already, the UK government is close to finalising plans to redefine extremism. I suspect the government will attempt to do this before the next general election. And also, if you didn't know, it's reported the new planned definition of extremism would target Muslim groups like the Muslim Council of Britain and MEND, and protest groups like Palestine Action. Unlike banning groups under counter-terrorism laws, which subject its members and supporters to severe criminal sentences following a ban, labelling a group as officially extremist will subject its members and supporters to general isolation and, more specifically, prevent participation in civil and public society. And more than this, redefining extremism is also about identifying those ideas and values often referred to as non-violent or more frequently as hateful. Let me try and explain how this will actually work practically if the new plan definition gets its go-ahead. Practically, a new definition would mean the government clarifying that some ideas would become, in effect, extreme to hold and promote. Those ideas, the ones considered by government as non-violent and hateful, ideas which are hateful of the other, possibly based on a reading of religious scripture or based on a counter-narrative of official wisdom. Ideas which create a hostile environment, ideas which are a precursor to violence, and ideas which are part of the radicalization process from the good citizen to the citizen that has crossed the line. So, for example, and I hasten to add that I'm admittedly speculating on what those ideas government are referring to, but it is based on tracking the trajectory of counter-terrorism laws and policies for nearly 3 decades. Calling Israel an apartheid state, equating Zionism with racism, chanting from the river to the sea, remaining silent when asked publicly to condemn a banned group, calling for the unity amongst Muslim-majority countries under a Sharia-run caliphate, expressing opinions that modern-day problems can be solved by religion, especially if that call is being made by a Muslim, and it's Islam being used to solve issues like football hooliganism or poverty, undermining the government's fundamental belief in its counter-terrorism strategy, that is PREVENT, which according to its most vocal paid supporters helps lots of people from being drawn into violence. Openly and consistently criticising the UK and its closest allies' military interventions, and this includes publicly opposing the several self-defence justifications given by the government, and the idea of protesting on insensitive occasions like Armistice Day, and at sacred locations like the Cenotaph, using provocative language which are considered hateful, or being involved in protest movements which openly call for acts which do or likely to cause severe disruption to Parliament, communities and businesses. Practically, a new definition would also mean more individuals and groups designated as extremists and extremist groups who would have no platform to speak in any public venue like a university, a public library, or a local authority-run community centre. A designated extremist group would practically be no funding from government or local authority. In addition, new definitions of extremism would mean more people and groups who are designated as extremists and extremist groups denied access to holding meetings with central government during a party conference, or with local authority officials, or with senior police officers to jointly tackle issues such as county lines, Islamophobia, violence, genocide, and war crimes. And practically, these new designated extremists and extremist groups would be mentioned and targeted by local authority, police and PREVENT officials in schools and local communities to actively discourage people to support and mobilise around these extremist groups and activities like attending a protest or attending their public meetings. Any definition of extremism will certainly be used by regulators like the Charity Commission or Ofsted as a new benchmark in its decision making, whether to investigate trustees for extremism or to upgrade or downgrade a school for its success or failure in tackling extremism. Any new definition of extremism might make it easier for governments to finally pass laws to regulate out-of-school settings concerned about Orthodox, Jewish, Christian and Islamic teachings, an ambition that stretches back over 10 years. No doubt any new extremism label will also mean the risk of an extremist losing employment, especially in the public and charitable sector. In the future, should a new definition of extremism be implemented, this would help support applications being granted by courts for extremism disruption orders if they ever became law. These orders would result in extremists being subject to civil injunction style orders backed by criminal sanctions for any breach of conditions, e.g. the use of the internet or entering an exclusion zone around a business, associating with particularly named individuals, or attending a place of worship. This was a law proposed back in 2016, and frankly, this planned law is never far away from the minds of some elected officials and lawmakers who are eager to call for ever more powers to crack down on extremists. Currently, the definition of extremism is from the 2011 Prevent Strategy, which is the active opposition to fundamental British values, including democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, and the mutual respect and tolerance of different faiths and beliefs. But this current definition has been heavily criticised, including by government advisors, as being too vague and inconsistently applied. Who are the individuals and groups who should be of extremism concern and who are not? Should particular environmental and animal rights groups be considered as extreme? This was, after all, canvassed by a previous Home Secretary, that one or two should be considered as extreme. And as a result, these criticisms of the current definition, the argument goes, does not allow for targeted, effective interventions by prevent role professionals and officials to, for example, take down extremist conspiratorial content by social media platforms, or to allow safeguarding leads at schools to know exactly when or when not to intervene, or whether to refer pupils and parents to prevent or not. Should a school refer a parent or pupil to prevent if they oppose particular material being taught, or pupils who wish to pray on school grounds, or some who wish to wear a badge as symbol of solidarity of what they consider to be occupied or oppressed people? To remedy these defects, the government seeks a new, clearer definition of extremism contained in reported leaked documents. The proposed definition change would be the promotion or advancement of any ideology which aims to overturn or undermine the UK system of parliamentary democracy, its institutions and values, or to threaten the rights of individuals or create a permissive environment for radicalisation, hate crime and terrorism. A definition its supporters would argue solves the confusion over who or what is extreme and when not to refer matters to prevent. But for critics, you can see why many of the usual groups like Liberty and Amnesty have major criticisms over the move to change the working definition of extremism. Two are mentioned here. Firstly, the planned definition has been criticised as open to interpretation and thus open to abuse, with the potential to demonise legitimate religious positions, as the current definition is said to do by some. One interesting example is given by one Christian group who surmises this: defining extremism to include creating a climate conducive to hate crime would be profoundly concerning in a context where a world-famous author can be branded a hate monger simply for opposing self-ID sex changes. And secondly, the planned definition of extremism has been criticised as clamping down on legitimate political dissent, specifically against those groups who challenge the UK and its staunchest allies for being involved in suspected genocide, terrorism or war crimes, and constantly accuse the government and opposition parties of complicity in those international crimes. The fear of being labelled an extremist may also explain why so few local community and national groups and prominent individuals have spoken about their concerns in police meetings, local authority meetings and government meetings, and instead simply remain silent about any changes to counter-terrorism and extremism strategies. Fear goes a long way in the UK, but should you be afraid of the plans to redefine extremism? Opposition parties are yet to finalise their plans for tackling counter-terrorism and extremism. But rest assured, new laws and policies will be on their way when there is any change in leadership or party in government. Everyone seems to want to be the party of law and order. It plays well to a wing of the party faithful and a particular crowd. And if you ask me, my prediction of any new definition of extremism in the coming months and years, it will be this: that the definition will be centred on hate. But what do you think? agree or disagree with the planned new definition of extremism? Will it threaten your religious and political rights? Do you feel hopeful or dismayed with the new plans to redefine extremism? Have I outlined the issues or overlooked some issues, or do you think I have over-dramatized issues in this post? And will you know who the new Untouchables are to stay away from? As ever, feel free to comment, subscribe for more, follow, like, and share.